Now that you're here, we can.
I'm excited.
Finally get down to this salacious book. So
Yeah.
I was mentioning to Ben.
Like
Some of
David
it
and you
definitely
guys
took me by surprise.
weren't expecting
There's
that.
a little bit of a splash of cold water. Whew.
Wait, you mean that you weren't expecting this to be a movie about or a book about amateur gay porn?
Yeah.
Well, that's on you because
I was,
pretty obvious.
to be honest, I wasn't expecting it even slightly.
I mean, it is true. It's about Dionysus, so I mean, I suppose we should have seen it coming.
Yeah.
But
just because I know Ben, I was like, when I read the copyrights page, I was like, oh, there's gonna be gay porn in this.
Yeah.
I can guarantee there's gonna be.
100%. See, Joe gets it.
is there gay porn in a lot of your books?
All of
No,
Not that there's anything wrong
this
with
is
that.
this is the only one.
Oh well, now I'm disappointed.
There's sadism in a few of the books.
Nice.
I was just telling
It's
Anthony.
always fun.
This probably isn't the best way to start the pod, but my most recent two books are probably more your style because they're like dystopian, country, that sort of stuff, culture. But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about this horny one.
Yeah. Well, so thank you. We have the Reckless Muse here again, and we're reading Ben's D'Alessio. Sorry if I should know how
perfect.
to pronounce that.
That's
Oh,
perfect.
great. All right. I am, not Italian, but whatever.
Working on it.
Yeah. And we're
hold it
reading his
against you.
book.
I can read,
Yeah, The Neon God, 2019, right? But I imagine, how long did this take you to write, though?
How long did it take to write?
Yeah.
Like first page to publishing it?
I guess, maybe when you first had the idea to write it.
So I first had the idea to write it. I actually say it in the beginning. So I was going for a jog just around my neighborhood. And there's like little libraries, they're called, like basically a book drop. Well, there's one on what's called Dominican Street. So by the way, I was living in New Orleans at the time. That's the context for this.
Gotcha.
I don't know if we talked about that last time. I went to law school there. I lived uptown. I was going for a jog on and Dominican Street is my school. I went to Loyola, but the law school's uptown more, so it's not like where Loyola, the main campus is. And it abuts a park called Audubon Park. And I just kind of popped my head in. I always check. Even here, I run on the bike path. That's kind of like my end point. And I just look in the book drop, see if there's anything good. And there was Edith Hamilton's mythology.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the tome.
Yes.
This is like she got on the back of the book, it's like her greatest honor, like the King of Greece. At the time they had a king, like bestowed her with some award that for writing this book. She wrote about Greek mythology mostly, but there's also like Norse mythology in there. And I looked at the book and I'm like, that'd be like, what if a Greek god and Dionysus being, the party god, what if he came to New Orleans? And that's honestly how it happened. I didn't start writing it that day. I was probably working on my second book because this is my third. And that's it. And then it went from there. So how long did it take? I wrote this mainly my 3L year. So I think I finished it. It says published 2019. I've graduated 2018. It's probably like, I don't know, a year and a half, like a year probably. It's a shorter book. It's like 74,000 words. It's not that long. So yeah, probably like a year and a half.
Nice. Yeah, no, well, that answers a bunch of my questions, too. I should have read I guess that would be the foreword. I didn't, sorry. But that's helpful because I was also wondering, I wanted to know, if you live in New Orleans, or lived in New Orleans, especially because that blurb that you have at the end about, how writers write what they know. I think that's definitely true and very good advice. And yeah, because you obviously are very knowledgeable about New Orleans in this. You're talking all about these streets and places I've never heard of. And then I was also going to ask if you had any background in just Greek mythology, because you have a ton about, just little details about that, obviously, throughout the book. But
I say that in the acknowledgments, which a lot of people don't read, so don't.
Sorry. we had a week to read it, so I just figured, let me get through the actual stuff.
That's where I left off, I think. That's where
I was telling Anthony before, I'm like, by the way, Joe definitely didn't read this book, so he would have gotten too turned on from all these hardcore gay sex.
Now.
Yeah, I told myself back.
Yeah.
So where was I? Do I have a background in Greek mythology?
Yeah.
No, I've always liked it. I think I reference in the book, there's like a book within the book about Greek mythology in one of the bookstores, and that was like a book from childhood that I was just kind of remembering, recollecting, and I just liked it when we learned about it in school. I don't remember exactly when that was, but finding that book really gave me the idea. So it's not like I was thinking, I need to write a book about Greek gods, like, at all. And again, this, if you're listening, those listening to this, Dionysus is the main character, but there's the whole kind of pantheon in some way or another in the book, or a bunch of them make appearances, especially Apollo and Zeus, Hera, I think. I don't remember exactly, but
Hades,
of course, Hades. So, and Poseidon, and that's really, that was really, I kind of did, it was like I found the book, thought of the idea, and then did the research. It wasn't the other way around.
And were you dating an L1? And did you cheat on an L1?
No, that is, I do make an appearance in the book. No, Zibby, who's, so Dionysus is the main character. I'd say Zibby is the other main character. I don't know if someone counted who gets more chapters, but every chapter is broken up between the two of them. Zibby's completely fictional, not even based off of anyone. For instance, I can say the professor, I think her name's LaSalle. Again, I've never actually read my own book, as in reading it to enjoy. I've read it several times in the editing process with my editor and that sort of thing, but I've never cracked open the book to read. I think it's pretty onanistic, but
I think you should not.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
It's an interesting question. I mean, that's an interesting question, though, because, maybe I don't want to... Well, let's get back to that. I don't want to...
So I was going to say, so I think, naturally writers will they'll either be amalgams of real people, if the book's about people, or... I think it runs the gamut of based on, inspired by, is, just a fictional version of all these things. So another example would be LaSalle, is a professor in the book. Now she's based off of a professor at my school somewhat, but it's a he. So I did gender swap there. I never had that professor, actually. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was more of what people told me. And it's an exaggerated version, but that she very much is based off of a real person.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, too, because, I haven't ever explicitly said, so I'll just keep it vague, but I may or may not have, gone to med school or be in med school. So I was, reading your experience in law school. I was like, this is completely different. I would never see... I didn't have any instructors that were like that. I didn't know if that was actually how law school was, or if it was exaggerated.
Yeah, so it's a good question. The short answer is, I think for the vast majority of students, the answer is no. But it very much used to be. So there's this famous book called 1L by Scott Turow. It's kind of like every law student reads it and knows law students should read it before they go to law school. Of course I did. Where it's that style. And if you watch, I remember there's this show. Did you ever see How to Get Away with Murder? Ever heard of that show? I don't know. I watched 1 or 2 episodes. Coincidentally, that was filmed at my college, not my law school, my college, my small liberal arts college in Pennsylvania, which was just crazy. But that they do the whole stand-up thing and the Socratic method. And while the Socratic method still very much is used, it's not used in the way that it is in that show and in the book, except for I did have one professor who did do that very much for half a semester, and it was one guy, and then he just flipped on a dime and was normal again. He kind of just does it to scare you, but so I got a taste of that. It was never that bad, but there are professors who will embarrass you, will just tie you in knots with logic. It's all it's if you don't know, you don't know. If you didn't do the reading or you didn't understand it or you didn't find it online. the answers online, what you should know. They will embarrass you sometimes. And what is true in most classes, it is random. So they will just pick on you. They will just say, Eric, tell me the holding in, Smith v. Johnson or whatever. Not all of them do, and some it's more formulaic, but that does still occur, which is much different than like college, where you're just like hungover sitting there or whatever, and you just kind of skim by.
Right. And you know what? I guess clinics are kind of like that, but the classroom in med school is not really like that. But when you get to clinics, obviously, they call it pimping, which I don't know where they got that. I know, it is weird. And everybody still uses it. But it's that idea, asking just random questions. But anyway, I've asked too much.
It seems to me kind of like the common fictionalized portrayal of law school. Because actually, I was thinking about while I was reading it, like scenes in Legally Blonde, even.
I was just thinking that too.
I don't remember the law school scenes in Legally Blonde. I think I do remember how she wins with like the hair or something. Like you would never get a perm and then watch.
I think the first scene she comes in and he asks her a question about some case that they're supposed to read about in the reading, and she was like, "Nobody does homework for the first day."
Right. Yeah.
And she gets kicked out.
Oh, that explicitly. Do people actually get kicked out? Because I was like, you're paying to be here. You can't kick me. That's what I would have said.
I got kicked out of Richard Davis's class like 3 times.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It was a bass professor.
For what? Oh, really?
For not being able to sing a whole tone scale.
That's really hard.
That's
difficult.
It's very hard. One, so Ben, I assume you don't know what that means, but it's a pretty tricky thing to sing. I don't know, just other stuff for like annoying him, for not being prepared in exactly the way he wanted me to be prepared.
So
kind of like this.
I remember. Did a student in the book get kicked out for being late?
Yep.
Did that happen?
It was late, and then also
unprepared,
just prepared, and then they like switched to the other class. You talked about the 2 pathways. I think they switched to the other pathway.
Gotcha. Oh, like common law, civil law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's a Louisiana thing, because if you don't know, Louisiana is the only state in the country that uses the civil law, civil code, I should say, which is like the Napoleonic Code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty crazy.
And it's like the continental European, where the rest of the country uses the common law. Where Louisiana also uses the common law, and to be honest, they're kind of full of themselves with the civil code. Like, it's not that much different in many ways. It's like contracts, it's called obligations, and wills and trusts is called successions or something like that. There are some stark differences, but for the most part, it's similar, and especially the criminal law. But so those are the 2 paths. So I do know that the professor that this professor is based off of did kick a student out for coming in pajamas. I know that.
Because they weren't wearing a seersucker suit, right?
Yes.
And they didn't start with like, I do declare. There was none of that.
I would go to court. I have been in court in New Orleans in the summer, where there are like guys in like light blue suits, just drenched in sweat. You would see that. New Orleans is gross in the summer. I mean, Houston's probably similar, to be honest.
It's the same thing.
It's the same kind of climate.
Yeah.
But it's funny because this isn't I've done other podcasts with this book. I did Alex Maselli. I don't know if you guys know her. Obviously Joe does. She's been on our show. I've been on hers. It's funny how like a lot of times when people ask the most questions about like the law school chapter. It's interesting that's what piques so many people's interest, because it's like they didn't go to law school, so but they could like imagine it. It's not like something crazy. It's just I know, and they know probably lawyers or people in law school, so it's kind of this interesting environment.
Part of it's
also. Well, we could ask the other side and just ask you about your experiences with Dionysus while you were in New Orleans.
Right.
I mean, did you join the cult? Did you die?
Oh, no, by the way, you can ask plenty of questions about whatever you want, whatever you found interesting. I just think she was interested in that stuff too.
I didn't want to like spoil it too, so I guess that's part of it's like I was trying to navigate. This is the first, I guess, author you're the first author we've interviewed, by the way. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ben's an author?
He is an author.
Well, that's news to me.
An author and a scholar.
The book is like 5 years old now. Yeah, it's over 5 years old now, so it's fine, I guess. I don't know. It's up to you guys if you want to. I guess we could say we might spoil it.
Yeah. Well, we'll at least talk about the brothel. I mean, I've got tons of questions about that. How did you do your research? Starts a brothel.
Wait,
yeah. Did you go Gonzo for this for research? Yeah. Did you go Gonzo for?
What's the brothel?
Well, I guess I'm calling it a brothel. Maybe you don't think about it like that, but essentially, okay. So I mean, we can at least explain
when he's like shooting the porn.
Yes.
Also, but before that, he's in the upstairs apartment above the bar.
Yeah, right. Dionysus essentially gets pimped out and is making money from having gay sex.
That's based off of a real bar.
I did go trace a lot of the places and see which ones are still there.
Yeah, they are. So I should say everything in the book, I think, for the most part, I based off of either said the real place or I based it off of a real place. There are some that might not be. Like there's an apartment at the end that I didn't base that off of anywhere exactly. I might have given it an address, but I don't know like the inside of the apartment. I don't know like this bar that's based off of. I don't know what's upstairs. I've never been upstairs in that bar. I've been in that bar. It is a gay bar. I'm not gay, but I was in there to get a drink, and that's
a likely story.
I was only there to ask for directions on how to get away from there.
Well, I mean, to be honest, in New Orleans though, like because you can drink on the street. By the way, have any of you guys been there? I know Joe, you have not, right? So you can drink on the street. Yeah. So it's like
I've been there.
And you do just run into a gay bar. Like you just walk in and like, oh shit, this is a gay bar. That's just kind of the nature of it.
And to be fair, I had this hardcore MAGA, like conservative, like total like red, team friend. But he's and so as much as he rags on a lot of like sort of left wing stuff, he's also like, to be honest though, dude, gay bars are really fucking fun, dude. Like I know, like if I say that to any right wing friend, they're gonna beat the shit out of me. But gay bars are actually a lot of fun.
Well, we get free drinks. Like it's very nice. It's like I get to feel like a woman. Man, nice. I feel like a woman.
Yeah, it's kind of nice.
So no, I've been in that bar. I think I got they have like a lot of places there. They have the daiquiris. I think they have a purple one. It was pretty gross if I remember. It's a pretty shitty bar. I think that's why I base it off of that. It's not
homophobe.
I'm not sure. It's not like one of the big ones. But anyway, so that is upstairs. Yeah, I don't remember. Like I've never been up there.
But you imagine Dionysus could set up a nice little shop.
I think I made all that up. I don't know how that would work.
I liked it though. I mean that's so for me. You started pulling me in, really pulling me in. I should say, like 40 or 50 pages when it started to get into that because it was like where what? I mean, it made sense, but I also didn't see it coming. You know what I mean? But it was like, it's Dionysus, of course. So I like that.
Maybe should we like at least kind of describe the summary? Like,
it's probably a good idea. That's a good idea, Joe. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
So to kind of set the scene. Dionysus is on Mount Olympus. If you don't know Dionysus, he's the Greek god of wine and revelry and fun and partying. In Rome, he's Bacchus, and in New Orleans they have a Bacchus float for Mardi Gras, and he is heartbroken, and he leaves Mount Olympus where they're always like backstabbing and bickering and shit. And he goes to New Orleans just to have
bender.
Fun. Yeah, to go on a bender and have fun and get away from everything up there. And he meets a girl named Zibby who works in a bookstore that is based off a bookstore in New Orleans that I actually love. And I will say the name of it. I don't think I hide it very well. I think the book's Blue Oak Books. In real life, it's Blue Cypress Books. I made it Blue Oak because it's on Oak Street in New Orleans. That is a real street. It's a great street. It actually gets used a lot in filming to be like Main Street USA. It kind of has that vibe, so they can film there, and it doesn't have to be in New Orleans. It could be anywhere. Where if you film on Bourbon Street or the French Quarter, everyone's gonna say that's New Orleans. So he meets her. It's not like they're together the whole book, and in fact, I think they're not together that often at all. And then it kind of follows them. It'll be a chapter with him and a chapter with her, and
she's a law student. She just started law school.
And that's kind of the setup. And a lot of things happen. Dionysus, he has a pull on people, I should say. He kind of casts a spell on them, not even purposefully all the time. He just kind of has that pull on. And it's on women, too. Like, there's a lot of homoerotic gay sex scenes, but he also sleeps with women and has children. Like, he just does. Right. He's kind of does that, too, and it causes problems in the city.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's good. Also, though, actually, I thought he was kind of in New Orleans because he was banished, in a sense.
Well, he was sort of in hiding from Hera, too, or like didn't want to deal with her trying to kill him.
Yeah. I mean, because everybody kept coming back and being like, come on, man, come back to Olympus, and...
Yeah, I don't think he was banished. I think
he wasn't banished.
He chose to go, and it was like Hera would just keep trying to kill him because he was a spawn of Zeus, when Zeus, as even people don't really know Greek mythology, know that Zeus just fucked anything that walked and had lots of children with other people. I can't remember. Is it Demeter or Semele was his mom?
Semele.
I think it's Semele. Or Demeter. It's one of them. I can't remember right now, but so he was like evidence of Zeus's infidelity, which Hera did not like, and Hera was kind of a crone, like a bitch, and just keep trying to kill him.
Yeah, Semele.
And then there's that cat, Margaret Atwood.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of cats. There are a lot of cats in the book. Margaret Atwood is based off of a real cat in that bookstore. I actually have the cats on the back of my laptop. I have a sticker for it. For her, they gave it to me because I support, like, even though I live in New Jersey and I have for a while, even like during COVID, I would still buy books from them. Like, I'd say, hey, do you guys have these 7 books? Yeah, we have 3 of them. All right. So I, just still buy from them because I like to support them. And to be honest, I don't have a very good bookstore around me. I have like one that's kind of seasonal because I live near the beach. So there's not, basically there's not a good bookstore nearby. And so I went there. Last time I went there a couple of years ago. I went 2022. They gave me that, and I've had my books in there before too. But so Alex did ask this question: are any of the cats based off of real cats? Ben's cat is based off of real cat. I think it does even have is its name? Kennedy?
Yep.
Yeah. Kennedy, that's my real cat. He's somewhere around here. He's real, and I have 2 cats, but at that time I just had the one. And then Elvis is a real cat who was great. He was like a neighborhood cat who everyone knew. You'd just be like, "Oh, hey, Elvis," and he'd be there, it's like killing cockroaches and shit. And
Orwell, there was an Orwell. Orwell was another cat, right? Orwell.
Yeah, I think that
Orwell was the fake cat of the writer.
Oh, the fake one. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yes, he was the tour guide writer's cat. So while that experience,
that was an interesting scene.
That's
obviously.
Good. I'm happy.
Should we say what it was, or do you want to?
But that is based off of a real experience I had where I did have a tour, and I feel bad putting him on blast.
Should we say what happened, or do you want to leave it?
Yeah, I'll say what happened.
Okay.
He wrote a really famous book in New Orleans, like a really well-known nonfiction book, and I think he won. He was like a reporter, a journalist, and he wrote this nonfiction book about Katrina. I'll tell you guys off when we're not recording, just because I don't want to put him on blast.
Yeah.
But I had a friend visiting me, and we went on this tour, and I loved this book, and I'm like, holy shit, this guy gives tours. Let's go do it. And it fucking sucked. It was awful. I don't know what happened. I think halfway through, we stopped at a bar, to cool off and get a drink, and he must popped something. Because he was completely different after that. He was slurring his words. He was repeating himself. This tour took 4 hours. It should have been 2 hours.
Oh my
God. It was meandering. I swear to God.
Bad.
And I was mortified because I had my friend visit, and he was fine. And after, I remember walking back, and he just turned to me and goes, "Don't meet your heroes." And it really sucked. And I looked him up, and I know the guy fell on some hard times, I think with drugs. He was like waiting tables, and I don't know, man. Like, it's still not an excuse. Like, you're running a business, you gotta be professional. Right. But that is where that comes from. Like she's meeting a hero there, someone that she loves, and
a writer,
she's giving tours, and she has a very bad experience. If we don't want to spoil it, we'll leave it at that.
Very bad.
That was based off of inspired by is probably the better term there, a real experience I had.
Because I assume he didn't do the real person didn't do the thing that Zibby had happen to her.
No, I was never alone with him. And,
that's good.
Never went back
Thank
to his
goodness.
place. Yeah, but it was just more of the meeting a writer that you really admire, and then it being a big letdown.
Yeah. So I will say, I'm saying this because you turned me around. So I'll be honest. When you first introduced yourself in the book, I was like, oh God, he put himself in the book. Just being honest. That's how I felt.
I get it.
But you got me when you made yourself to be a piece of shit. Basically, I was like, thank you, thank you.
Because I was like, there's some nonfiction in this book. Nice, cool.
Because I was like, if you're gonna put yourself in a book, you got to be like fun with it, and and then it just seems like so. Yes, I think you did it perfectly. So thank you. And also the fact that I kind of hated it and then came around to really liking it, I think was actually even better than just like So yes.
Yeah,
I like that.
I have not slept with a professor, by the way. And like I said, that professor is based off of a man. And no, I haven't. That's all fake. It's a fictionalized. It is Ben DeLucio. He does have a cat named Kennedy. That is my apartment, right? That was where I lived on Maple Street.
What did you call the cover of the window? You called it like a cum-covered like pillow? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Oh wait, what do I do?
Yeah, it is something like that. It's like either cum covered or cum colored.
Maybe it was cum colored. Yeah.
I don't remember that.
I did appreciate your usage of cum, like cum, that spelling and the whole thing.
Dude,
it was great.
I just opened to the page serendipitously. Here it is. So it was Zippy Rose from the side. It's a page 217 in my, and I'm assuming
it's all
the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
217. Yeah. Okay. I want to follow along in my own book. Go ahead.
The knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock. She peeked in through the silver of the window, not blocked from the pillowcase cum curtain Ben had nailed into the door. That's pretty good.
Yeah, the silver window, not blocked from the pillowcase cum curtain Ben had nailed into
That's
the
a great
door.
detail. Yeah. It really, because it has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't come up at all.
No.
It's just a completely
come up.
I did have a pillowcase nailed to the window. I guess I was either too lazy or couldn't afford a blind, so I just nailed a pillowcase to the door.
No.
Because I lived the apartment was a ground floor apartment. I lived, the worst place you could ever fucking live was next to a parking lot that was across the street from Starbucks.
Yeah.
So you have the worst people in America parking there. And it was I lived it was very weird. Like, I lived where a lot of people didn't live. It was like mostly businesses, which is very cool because there were like the guys above me, they were, I don't know, tech bros, and the apartment next to me was just used for like storage because the people who owned my building owned a jewelry store next door. So like they said, so I was the only resident there, and around me was a wine bar, coffee shops, bakery, bars. I think he goes to Bruno's in there. That is my bar. I hope he does. I hope she does. Or I mentioned Bruno's at least because that is my bar in New Orleans. I love that place.
Nice.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
But that is where I live. So I was always around people. Like, there was like people right there. So I was like,
right,
fuck this. I need some privacy.
Right.
Did you go to pillowcase to the window?
Did you go to college in the South, or how'd you end up
went to college in Pennsylvania.
Oh, you said that. Sorry. Yeah. How'd you choose New Orleans? Did you want to go there?
I always liked the idea of going there. I'd never been there. One of my dad's good friends, who is a lawyer, went to Loyola, and he spoke very highly of it. And I thought it'd be cool to live in another part of the country. I got into a couple schools in New York. I really applied, just like New Jersey, New York. Maybe I think I applied to Ole Miss. But that was really it. And I got in, and I did go there fully expecting to stay, just become a New Orleanian. But I got homesick, and law school is not like undergrad where people are at all different places in their life. They're not looking to like make new friends, and like people have kids. People have, they're somewhere in their 40s, some are right out of college and have friends. So it was more for that reason that I didn't stay. But that's really why I went down there. Was I got in, and my dad's friend said it's a good school.
Homesick for New Jersey?
Yes, believe it or not.
Interesting. So one thing that I really liked about the book was the structure, where it kind of bounced back and forth between Dionysus and Zibby. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like Pulp Fiction, where it's like different stories where it's like they kind of interact a little bit, but they're not. It's not like, like these two are like exactly the same. So I'm curious about like what inspired that structure.
Yeah, it's a good question, Joe. So
that is a good question. I wish I had thought of it.
I've been known to think about things sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so I was going to say, so in my first book, I do that also, but it's not as equal. And one is introduced much later. And that's actually where this book is both third person, right? So that book is a first person and a third person. And if you like this, my two most recent books, it's 5 of that. So
nice.
It's 5 different characters. But I don't know exactly.
Don't push your luck. Don't push your luck, dude.
I think I don't know if anything like inspired me to do. I thought maybe we needed a human to be more grounded than just having a deity, and to kind of show. And also, like, I thought a local would be cool to have in there, so you get both the outsider perspective and the local's perspective. And that's probably why I can't. Like Eric's question about what inspired me to write the book, the idea that I do have like a straight answer for. I know exactly the moment, but that I don't know, because like I said, Zibby isn't based off of anyone at all. Like, she really is just a figment of my imagination. So yeah, I don't know.
It reminded me a little bit of also Dracula. You guys read that one at all? Has anybody here read Dracula? So the original.
I have read Dracula. Yes.
So it's an epistolary novel, so it's not like word narrative. It's like the story from different perspectives, where it's like a journal entry from one character, and then like letters, newspaper clippings, and I like that, where it's like something supernatural is happening, but we're getting from different perspectives, from the perspective of like the supernatural entity, as well as the perspective of like a regular human being going, what's all the supernatural shit going on? So it actually kind of reminded me a little bit of that, of Zibby, which is like, hey, what's going on in my fucking city? What the hell? And then you got like the actual like God going like, yeah, I'm gonna like fuck shit up, yeah, right, yeah. I know, it's kind of reminded me a little bit of that.
Yeah, no, I can't see that because I haven't read Dracula, but it's War and Peace, I feel like, is like that too. Although it's probably more like Ben's more recent novel if it's 5. Because War and Peace obviously has a ton of different characters.
Yeah, I actually have I'm going to read War and Peace this winter. I've had it on my shelf. Usually I don't let books sit on my shelf that long. I like to read them. And I did get that coincidentally at Blue Cypress Books. So I've had it since law school. And I'm just like, mother, it's so fucking big.
Right. No, it's crazy. But it's like, and first off, I'm really glad that I liked it too, because it's like, God, it would suck if this sucked.
Yeah,
and then we had you on.
I figured if
you
guys didn't like it, I figured just what we got to reschedule. I got canceled. But all right, they don't like it. It's fine. That happens.
No, but I was.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because reading your dialogue, like what I like about what you did and I think this is why people like Tolstoy, at least this is when I was reading, I was like, you can actually tell that the psychology of the characters changes. You're able to actually describe different psychologies, which I think is kind of the big, I don't know. I mean, I don't write fiction, but in my head, that's what probably separates the really good fiction writers from the not as good, is that you have dimensions to your characters, and they're not just like you can't tell that it's all written by one person. I don't know.
I like that. I try and generally write characters that are like, I think maybe the terms have been kind of overplayed in the last decade or so, but like morally gray, like a lot more like realistic, believable. Like sometimes they're shitty, sometimes they're good. I think that's most people. Like very few people are saint-like or demons. Like they're a mix of things, and they're confusing, and people are messy, and and I try to do that. I don't know. And I've been told that from other people who have read my books. Like, oh, I liked that. Like, kind of what you said. Like, oh, well, you wrote yourself in the book, but you're a dick. Like, that's like that's not what's expected. And like my first book, which is, it wasn't me. It's like this. I've been to almost all of the places in it. It's more of a travel book, like a right out of college backpacking Europe type thing. And, he makes good decisions. He makes bad decisions. He screws people over. He helps people. Like, it's this kind of a mix of things. And I think people can relate to that a lot more than the archetypes that are so oftentimes kind of shoved into stories.
Yeah. Well, so I forget, how did you guys meet again? I think we might have covered this on the first one.
Gay porn.
Nice.
Gay porn. I knew it.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I thought I'd seen you guys before. Okay.
It was on like one of those gay apps. I think it was like Grindr or Pounder or Fister.
I like you had Kindling as the app.
I think we might have met each other on all of them. I think we just can't
keep matching.
It is so wild how when I did a semester in London and I had a gay roommate, and it was crazy to me how much just random sex he had on Grindr, just like nonstop, whenever you wanted. Like, it was wild. But no, Joe and I actually met, and I'm jealous, but like Joe and I actually met on Twitter of all places.
Yeah. Twitter and Medium. So
that's right.
Yes,
you mentioned. You're reminding me. I think we did talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Reckless Muse started off as like this little like arts and sort of culture publication on Medium, and so Ben had actually submitted a few stories to it.
That's right,
and I liked them. So yeah, sure. Like I think you might have been the first person to submit stories to it that was not me. That was like someone else. Or was like, oh, cool, like finally someone's.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Like I think you were one of, if not the first one, to be like, oh, hey, like there's another publication that's, because like the whole thing was like, it's not political, it's not partisan, it's just if you have an interesting story or article that's related to arts or culture or whatever. So I think you were the first one to actually submit some stories. I was like, oh, finally, cool, yeah, these are good stories, sure. And then we followed each other on Twitter and we interacted, and that's how we. It
was also the timing was like the craziness of 2020, 2021.
Yeah,
So it was like a very sensorial climate. And Joe, I remember there was a point where I was like, am I fucking wrong here? Like, am I, like, honestly, I was questioning myself, like my own sanity. It was like, because I couldn't say anything and there's a lot of stuff going on, and I was like, am I wrong? And then Joe was one of, I think, feel like one of the few people that I was seeing kind of have similar opinions that I was having. And now we're a match made in heaven.
Exactly.
So Joe, do you have anything published? I'm sorry, I should know this. I should have done some background research.
Yeah, and I'm actually disgusted that you would even ask that question. It's poor journalism on your part.
I know. I'm an asshole. What can I say?
No. I mean, I've written some short stories, a handful of like short horror stories. I dabble more in screenwriting and filmmaking. Actually, awesome. so Ben has actually, when he's visited, the last time he visited in L.A., I took him to the venue. So Ben, this is the venue that's right next to the one that I showed you. But right next door is it's a big empty warehouse. It's a big sort of warehouse space that's set up like a kind of like a gothic speakeasy, and it has like this creepy upstairs area. It looks very David Lynchian. So I've shot some like test horror footage and stuff like that. So, but anyway, like getting back to like the published stuff, like other than publishing articles. In like the Reckless Muse and some short stories and things like that. It's been mostly localized just to TRM.
Do you have any desire to write a longer length thing, kind of like what Ben's doing, or do you like the format of the short stories?
Well, I can say we have
we've bounced around a few screenplay ideas for sure.
Yeah. We started a screenplay, and I was just saying, like, I just finished my 6th book. Congrats! I actually wrote it on a typewriter, which is really douchey. But
you hipster. You're a millennial, aren't you?
Yeah. And then so I rewrote it onto Word, and I just gave that to my editor on Sunday. Wow. So now, and I told Joe, I'm like, look, I have too much shit going on. But we wrote, a few pages to a screenplay, a horror screenplay. So like we're working on that. Like that is in the works. So I guess, I don't know if you're working on anything else, Joe, but that is something that we want to make that, a regular, I think we want to do like a regular length movie, right?
Yeah, feature length, I do need to figure out my job. It'd be nice to be able to pay rent, but once I figure that out, then yeah. But hopefully, like the next week or two, I'll have something figured out. But anyway, to answer your question, like Ben and I have definitely, we've got a few ideas in the hopper.
That's awesome,
and we've got some stuff in the works. I haven't really considered writing any like novels. I've thought a little bit about like some nonfiction books that I would like to write. Like I'm really fascinated by. Some like the most rebellious artists throughout history, like across centuries, like ones who kind of broke rules, who kind of were like faced, persecution either from like the church or the state or from, just society because of, whatever mores happened to be at that time. So I've kind of bounced around a few ideas of like, it might be kind of cool to do like, this is, these are history's greatest rebels or history's greatest bastards of the arts. But other than that, like not so much in terms of fiction, but I don't know. Maybe I'll do the Tarantino thing where I'll dominate one medium and then just move over to another one at some point. So
that's awesome though. Yeah, I mean, all of this. So I'll say I write a lot, but it's all. I do research, and so it's all scientific publications stuff.
Right.
So it's all nonfiction and everything like that. Every time I sit down and try to write fiction, I always feel, and this is one problem, is probably because I don't read enough and then I don't practice, but I cannot get past feeling like my dialogue is always cheesy. So, I mean, do you guys ever feel that way? And then how do you overcome that if that's the case? Because, that's one of the things also that keeps me away from fiction, because I feel like a lot of dialogue when I read fiction is cheesy. Yours wasn't, but it's just like, it's hard to, I don't know.
So my editor said, and this isn't going to answer your question, but like one of the things that she noticed with me that was really strong right away was the dialogue. So I kind of just write, I think how people talk with pauses and not complete words all the time and kind of talking when they think and and okays and and stuff like that. So my advice would be to, depending on what you're writing, to try and write how you think people speak.
Right.
But at the same time, I've heard the opposite, where it's like, well, people read fiction for an escape, and they don't want to be grounded necessarily. They want something entertaining. I think that's why people like Tarantino's dialogue or The West Wing or that sort of stuff, where it's like punchy. So I guess it all depends. I don't have an answer to it. I can't tell you really what works for me, but I guess find what you like and emulate that. If you know a certain writer who writes fiction, writes dialogue that you really enjoy, just try and write that way.
Yeah, I think John Irving's probably my favorite writer. I haven't really analyzed, but World According to Garp, I don't know if you ever read that, but that's probably my favorite
I obviously know him,
book.
but I haven't read any of them.
Yeah.
The way I think about the dialogue issue, because I was thinking about this, because Eric and I were talking about the issue of dialogue coming off as cheesy in a lot of situations. I think it actually is similar to playing music and improvising, in that it has way more to do with audience buy-in than the content. And it's this thing where, if you're listening to someone doing an improvised solo or something like that, if the audience is in it and they trust the player can do all sorts of crazy stuff that has nothing to do with any rules or anything like that. But if the audience is on the edge thinking that player is about to mess up, if the performer has set up a situation where the audience is nervous for them, then they're really on thin ice, and it is very easy for them to make a mistake sort of in the context of the creation. And I think probably the same is true for dialogue. And I noticed this, because I love Quentin Tarantino movies, but at the beginning, I noticed the dialogue as being weird, and it takes 10 or 15 minutes for me to be in it, and I've bought in, and I'm not noticing the dialogue anymore.
I'm so glad that you made that connection to music, Anthony. So, are you familiar with what's that bass player's name? Victor Wooten.
Yes.
Are you familiar with him at all? So I watched this short clip with him, and
I think I know it.
Talking about he's talking about the importance of context. And so it looks like he's like giving like a demonstration to an audience, and so he has a guitarist, a rhythm guitarist, and he's playing like I think it's just one chord, but he's playing like this funky, like a very straightforward, like kind of funky groove, and so he tells the audience, okay, so he's playing this groove, and people go on and on about like when you're improvising, avoid playing a wrong note. But he goes, so I'm going to play just a chromatic scale, which is dun 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 dun. So just go up the scale, but you tell me when I play the wrong note, and he plays. But here's the thing: he plays in rhythm. So every note, like even if he technically plays like a wrong note, a note that doesn't fit, naturally within that scale, it's like a leading tone to another one. So it's like it's still building exactly, and it's building tension. So and he's just going up the chromatic scale, and he's talking. He goes, "Hey, when somebody say when I'm playing the wrong note," but because he's committed so much to that chromatic scale, but he's doing it with such confidence, and he's playing in rhythm. It's like the audience buys this. Oh, he's leading up to something. He's going to do something really cool. But you're never at once going, oh, he's playing the wrong note. So tying this back into dialogue, Tarantino, obviously his dialogue is very over stylized, but because he just commits to it full, all the way. It's like, hey, I'm going to have two hitmen. They're going to go kill people, but they're going to have like a casual conversation about cheeseburgers in France. They're going to talk about foot rubs. Like I'm gonna have the KKK, and they're gonna be bitching about the size of their masks or whatever. Yeah. It's like so it's like, but that's the thing. It's like he fully commits to it, and so like you as the audience are like, oh, like I'm into it. I buy like this is the world that this creator has made. I'm just gonna go along with it. One of my favorite filmmakers is David Lynch, and his characters are very stilted. They have really weird, bizarre dialogue. But again, he's created like this very dreamlike world where you go, okay, everybody talks like this. I'm going to go with it. I'm not going to question it and be like, oh, people don't talk like that in real life. So getting back to the dialogue thing, I think if you have a clear vision in your mind of, this is a world in which it has very naturalistic dialogue. So I'm just going to like emulate, conversations that I've had or that I've heard. And that's what I'm going to inject into the story. But if you do something stylized, just commit to it. Just go all the way and be like, yeah, this is the world. Just accept it and go along with it. I think just having a clear vision of like the tone of the story and making sure that whatever you do contributes to the end goal of that.
Well, I really like the rhythm point because I think that's spot on, certainly for music. Also, just a real quick funny side story. So Victor Wooten, Anthony and I met in college. We were roommates and we both studied music. And Victor Wooten came to our university at one time and gave a master class, and he chastised all of us because he was like, if you're not taking notes, why are you even here? Basically, it was just kind of funny. So that was good. But he had, again, it was a good point. It's like, I mean, because he was saying, you want to learn, so you should be writing stuff down. And it's funny because I normally write things down all the time, but you just think, I'm going to go see Victor Wooten, I'll just hang out and relax. But he's just very, I mean, and it shows in his ability. He's very just business. It's all about the work. But the rhythm, and so I imagine the rhythm and the dialogue too. Yeah, I think the analogy holds very well because, I mean, even like what you were saying, Ben, in your book, it's like you were emulating some of the accents that New Orleaners would have too, and so I think that's a good point. So
well, in the book, and I also try and I want Dionysus to be very much looked at as an outsider and something different, and that's why he kind of speaks really formally, and he's really melodramatic. And sometimes it's like, I think if he's just like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, where are you from? Like, and I want that to be, it's like, oh no, he's supposed to be different. Right? Like, he's different. He comes from a different place. Now, does it make sense that a Greek god would just be speaking English? No, I try and, you have to suspend disbelief here in some of this, or else the plot doesn't make any sense. But I think the rest of the human characters, and I try to make that juxtaposition from, early 20-somethings talking from, they're from different places, I think, are friends, and then like him, like you start the book and he's calling black people Numidians because like that's like he's just like talking. She's like, you can't say that. You can't just call black people Numidians. Like that's not okay.
So I have actually one of my favorite passages, which I think kind of demonstrates Dionysus, like his very formal, lofty style of dialogue, and but in the sort of modern New Orleans context. And so I just want to read these two short paragraphs real quick. Yeah. So this is near the beginning. A yellow yard sign. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You didn't think I read?
What page do you know?
So this is near the beginning of the book. A yellow yard sign was stuck in the grass next to him. Save the Carrollton Courthouse. New Orleans is operating without a functioning house of the law. Athena warned me about the depravity and degradation of the city, but I did not suspect that it was completely lawless. Anarchy is for the Italians and Spaniards. The Greeks created the law. And then Dionysus goes, "We created the law," Dionysus shouted at a passing jogger who had hoped that moving into East Carrollton neighborhood would have sheltered him from the derelicts that infested downtown. He picked up his pace. So,
and that is real, by the way. That so Carrollton, where I lived, and thank you, Joe, for highlighting that. I forgot about that. That was pretty funny. Where I lived, so I lived in a neighborhood called East Carrollton, and back in the day, it was its own town. Like there was between that and New Orleans was like a bunch of farmland or something, right? And they kind of drained it, and now it's like part of Uptown. It's a very popular area. But so it had its own courthouse, and it's kind of just fell into disrepair. And there were those signs around my neighborhood, like "Save the Courthouse." Right? It wasn't. I think maybe it's being used as a school at one point, but it wasn't an operational courthouse. But yeah, another based off. I don't remember if those were there last time I was there, but that's another thing that was real.
Nice. So
after our last episode, we read Camus. I did a whole Reddit battle. People got really mad as usual.
Dude, we're constantly in Reddit battles.
I have been banned from so many subreddits.
Reddit sucks. Yeah, I got banned. I got banned from the Greek mythology subreddit.
Right. Dude, I'm banned from our libertarian. Yeah. Anyway, so what I was posting was about sort of Camus' perspective on art being sort of the only way to access sort of godly truth, in that art versus nonfiction or factual statement has a way of accessing, like human experience in a truer way, because it's about things that are not being said. And so, like Leonard Bernstein, I think we talked about it, he has these series of lectures he gave at Harvard in the 60s, and there's a line from it that I used to listen to and I never understood until we read the Camus, which was that music communicates the unknowable. And I always thought it was like kind of a silly, lofty thing. And it kind of hit after we read the Camus about the unknowable being something about experiencing or like truth of experience. And then I'm thinking about fiction versus music and the way that all of us engage in art in our different ways versus how we engage in nonfiction. And I kind of have this idea that art is essentially you're being an illusionist in different ways. And, making a novel, you have, 20,000 words or something like that. But really the story, the entire thing is existing in this made up space. And it's like the buying in with the dialogue. It's like, is the illusion created? Or like, have you achieved flight or something like that?
Sorry.
What I think is interesting is sort of Joe, Eric, and I, we all studied music, and we're all sort of musicians going back a long time. And Ben, as I understand, you have very little musical training, musical performance.
Yeah, none.
But you're still engaging in art in, honestly, an impressive way. You have all these books out. I don't have any books out. But
there's that Picasso saying where it's like art is the lie that reveals the truth.
Sure. I love it. I feel like that's a different way of saying something similar.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Well, I think if Stanley Kubrick, I'm paraphrasing here, but he's got this quote where it's like the least effective way to get a point across to your audience is to do it directly. If you do it in a way in which it's couched in fiction and characters that are not real, in a story that's not real, or that didn't really happen, when you allow some ambiguity, making some room for the audience to stumble upon the actual point that you're making, that's so much more powerful than you just straight up telling your audience, my story is about blah, blah, blah. My story is about the duality of man, or about man's inhumanity to man, or something like that. But it's like by letting audiences go, I wonder what that was about, and letting them wrestle with it and even debate each other about what it's really about, and then having somebody say, I think this movie or this book or this poem is actually about blah, blah, blah. Like that's going to last so much more. It's going to last so much longer with them, and it's going to have a bigger impact on them.
Read the Bible.
Obviously, the risk. Was that?
Read the Bible.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I mean, but seriously, I mean, there might be some truth to that. I'm an atheist, but at the same time, I even though I'm an atheist, at the same time, it's like, I always roll my eyes whenever I see atheists take like this hardcore literal view of the Bible, and it's like, there's a reason why the Bible has lasted this long. It's not just because people read it like it's or like most people don't read it like it's a historical document. There's so much more that's kept it alive. So that's not something that you should dismiss out of hand. But the same thing is true with art. I think some of the greatest works of art are those where it's like, people are still debating what the Mona Lisa is about, who the subject was. There's a lot of power, I think, in ambiguity and letting the audience struggle and wrestle with what the actual meaning is about.
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Oh, thanks. I say there's truth in fiction, and I've gotten in arguments with a friend about, he's like, how can you? Like I don't read novels, I don't read fiction. I'm like, first of all, no offense taken. And second, it's like I think there's way more. Like you're talking about, the Bible is the best example. I think Greek mythology is a great example. I mean, there's thousands of years old, and it can still be applied to contemporary times, and it can take on different meanings. And those lessons can be evergreen, or they can be, and it tells you about the culture you're in. Like in some, you might see it. For instance, I do this all the time. I've gone on this rant with Joe on our episode on our podcast about, did you see the Godzilla versus Kong?
Yeah, I watched the first one.
Yeah. So
I think maybe a long
Joe,
time
you remember
ago,
my rant about this? So Godzilla versus Kong came out a few years ago, and it's they eventually team up to fight Ghidorah, right? And I argue that Ghidorah is the hero of the movie, because Ghidorah, is humanity's only counterweight to these kaiju who just appear randomly, destroy entire cities with one swipe of Godzilla's tail. He's wiping out the global economy because he's destroying Hong Kong, and everyone's watching them go recede into the sunset, being like, "Bye, Godzilla, we love you." It's like the death and destruction that he just caused will ruin generations. And Ghidorah is actually man-made because they bring back Ghidorah. I was calling Mecha Godzilla in our episode, King Ghidorah, and he's actually a way for human beings to fight back. Now, if you just made a movie like a documentary explaining these things, that's not as interesting. Right. But when you could argue them out, and a lot of people, some people I convinced, and they're like, I never thought of it that way, because that's not what the movie is actually saying. The movie is saying, for some reason, it's tech is the enemy, and God forbid they stop these creatures from just ruining our entire civilization. And I think so these stories, fiction, whether it's the Bible, Greek mythology, War and Peace, whatever, there's a reason that they're taught and reread. And that's why I think Joe and I have such an aversion to these, let's say, progressive identitarian type professors who are no more dead white men. Right. Western civilization is bad. It's no, this shit is important. Right. It's also important to read, what did they read in Japan, or what art did they make in Japan or India or Of course. Let's get it all together and enjoy it, because maybe you I'm not trying to be trite here, but honestly, do you know what I think art is? I think art is a way to make life less shitty. That's it. I think art makes life better, because when we had to hide in our huts from the Mongols, life fucking sucked. And we didn't have time to make art. And art is a testament to human ingenuity and farming and architecture and all these things. Like, there's a reason that Joe and I have had episodes about architecture. Like, we love beautiful buildings, because a beautiful building is a beautiful building whenever. Sure, tastes change sometimes, but like the Chrysler Building in New York, or parts of the French Quarter, or I don't know, like
Chicago.
What was that?
Chicago,
yes, exactly. I think I talked about this on the last episode with you guys. Like, that's beautiful, and the fact that so much of it has just become, glass towers in the sky, just to, whatever's the cheapest or whatever. Like, I think that we lose something, and we kind of are not doing ourselves a service when you. And again, it's easier said than done when you like leave out the artistic aspects of things, and it's for the betterment of humanity. Now, sure, Anthony and I will argue sometimes about, like, I will argue, do I believe billionaires should exist? I don't know. Sometimes that like left-wing side comes out of me. I'm not saying you can't be rich, but billionaire seems excessive. But back in the day, there were billionaires who, like the Rockefellers, they like loved their cities, and they weren't just about extracting the most resources and money out of people. Maybe they were in some ways, but they were also about like creating museums and preserving art and making beautiful buildings. And it was almost a competition between New York and Chicago and these other cities. And we all benefited from that in a way. I'm sure some people fucking had miserable lives because of it, but like, I think that's also being lost, which sucks. There was a patronage that the billionaires used to have that I think has been lost from the kind of modern ultra wealthy.
Yeah, and you know it was earnest because Rockefeller liked Cleveland. I mean, come on, no, okay, sorry.
I missed that. What was that?
He was from Cleveland, so he was trying to build up Cleveland. I was just saying, it's earnest because he was trying to build up Cleveland. Right. Okay. Anyway,
I didn't know that. They were from Cleveland?
Yeah, that's where he like set up. I think that's where they set up. But then he eventually moved, obviously, to New York City.
Yeah, I'm not saying, of course, they fucking ruin people's lives too and all that. I know, but like it felt like there was something a little more to it. Like they gave back somewhat with their preservation of art and wanting like people to want to come to these cities and want to enjoy them. And I don't know. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I'm gonna stick to it.
So your point, Ben, about how art is a way to make life less shitty, I think is a good one. So are you guys familiar with that artist David Cho? He's a Korean American artist. He's a graffiti guy, and he became really famous because he did some art for at Facebook. And it became instead of taking like a salary, he took stock, and he's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's right.
But anyway, so Jon Favreau, who was working on The Mandalorian, the Disney Star Wars show, he approached David Cho and he goes, "Hey, you want to do some background art? Just some cool graffiti in the background of some episodes?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "So what do you have in mind?" And David Cho goes, "In every single war, in every single country, in every single era, there's always art. There's always graffiti showing up. Like it's always like rebellious, anti-war or like anti-establishment. So what if I did what I do, but I did like in an alien way?" And I was like, "Oh, that's actually a really cool point of like this very like no matter how bombed out your city is, somebody's going to come along and be like, yeah, fuck you, whoever blew up my city,
big dick."
Exactly. Yeah.
God, Star Wars is filled with.
Yeah, exactly. Like alien dicks, but
dicks are always funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true.
But I like the idea of taking like this universal aspect and then like sort of transposing it into like this fictional thing and being like, yeah, hey man, like Star Wars. It's called Star Wars. It's and because The Mandalorian I think took place right after like Return of the Jedi, so it's like it's kind of the fall of the Empire or whatever. But yeah, have you guys seen that photo of like during World War II? Like it was like some soldiers. They had like this big wooden box of like bombs and missiles and shit, and like somebody tagged on it as like Easter eggs for Hitler.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I did see that. No, that's funny. Huh.
Well, that's what in the show Rome. I just rewatched it like last year. It got canceled after I think only 2 seasons. It's too expensive to make. But we have this idea, and I'm going to Rome in 3 days. we have this idea that like everything was like white, like everything was whitewashed, and because all the paints come up, like Rome was actually really colorful. And there was also a lot of graffiti, and like in the movie or in the show Rome, there are just like guys with giant dicks just like on the wall. And I'm not saying that graffiti is good necessarily. I like street art. I don't just like graffiti, but like there's also a reality of it that a lot of people don't really realize. Even back then there was like political art, and they would have, the elites doing lewd sex acts. And I think that I really like that aspect of the show, because people, I think, just think it was like marble and white and pristine.
There was some theologian, I think, in the early 20th century, and I'll have to like triangulate where I found this, but it was I thought it was such a wonderful quote. It was, "Art is man's signature." I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I like that. Like, that's like the thing that really separates us. Like, we're the only ones that really care about aesthetics, I think.
Right.
It seems to be. I mean, given the what the animals are dressing in. I mean, come on, so tacky.
Have you guys seen? You guys would really like this because you're all musicians. Have you seen the movie? It's called Vengeance. It came out last year. I think it was 2023. Dude, this movie was like one of my most underrated movies of the year. I watch a lot of movies, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that. Joe knows that. I watch like 120 movies a year.
Nice.
And I try to watch as many from the most recent years possible, outside of the few kind of themes we do, like Horror Fest. But this movie is really cool, and there's a scene in it that I'll just send you, because it is just a scene on YouTube, because I think so many people liked it. And long story short, it's Ashton Kutcher. He's playing a record producer. There's this girl in there, and to like kind of pump her up to record her song, he gives this whole spiel on what is music, right? Like, that's the question. What is music? And he says, and I'm going to butcher this, and you should definitely watch this anyway, but it's like, whether you believe that that life started with a big bang or God said, let there be light, it started with a sound. So think of what you're doing. Your time on this earth is scratching like your sound on the timeline of life, something like that. And I feel like you guys would, and the girl sings really well, and it's a very like touching scene. And that's also a great movie, by the way. It's about like a lot of different stuff. It's political, but it's like not, it kind of like throws you through a loop. Like, you think it's going to go one way, it kind of goes the other. But that's a really cool scene. I'll send it to you guys. I think not like hearing what you're talking about. And I honestly, Joe, I don't know why I didn't send this to you earlier, but like definitely for like music people, it really makes a good argument for, and it has that metaphor for what's your point here? What are you doing? Right. And they can make that they can put that to music, and it's very good.
Yeah, no, I like that, and it's getting me back to what we were discussing before about how actually I think the best art, in my opinion, and this is what we were essentially saying, is something that you can look at. Everybody can look at it a little bit differently. I think that's kind of what we were getting at. And so I write music, and I write lyrics, and that's what I'm constantly trying to do with lyrics too. I think the best lyrics are the type that one person interprets it maybe completely differently than another one. It's ambiguous enough that it's like a one of those gyroscopes or whatever, where you look at it and then like from one angle and it's different. And anyway, but it's getting me thinking about Nietzsche, and I wanted to ask about Nietzsche because we're talking about Dionysus too. So Nietzsche is also in Ecce Homo talks about how he thinks that he'll be perpetually misunderstood, and I think that's probably pretty clear. That's kind of what happened. I mean, I certainly read it, and I think he's saying one thing, and then I think he's saying another thing the next week or something. But was Nietzsche an influence, like at all? Because I mean, Nietzsche talks about Dionysus and Apollo a lot in. I think it's the Birth of just generally the Birth of Tragedy. I didn't know. It sounds like, I guess you did. I answer this. I asked, how did you choose like Dionysus and Greeks and everything like that? But at first, I thought maybe it was a Nietzsche thing. But I guess
no, because I only have kind of like a superficial knowledge of Nietzsche. I don't know if I've even read any of his books.
He loves Dionysus.
Did he? Oh, see, I didn't know that. When what you're saying about Nietzsche, I think is accurate. Where it's like people hear him say, correct me if I'm wrong, when he says like God is dead, and like no, that's a lament. Like he thinks that's a bad thing, even though he was an atheist, right? And kind of an ardent atheist.
He was the Antichrist.
But he was saying, and is he the one who said if if God didn't exist, humans would make him. Is that Nietzsche?
Might be that I'm not as familiar with, but he certainly said like, God is dead.
If God didn't exist, human beings would create him. I thought that was Nietzsche, but anyway, no, I did not know he had. I know he didn't he write about the Buddha.
He wrote about in the Antichrist he talks a lot about the Buddha, but in The Birth of Tragedy he contrasts, Apollonian and Dionysus.
He also says that I have a quote from Ecce Homo that I thought was sort of apt for this conversation. He says, this is Nietzsche, I'm a disciple of the philosopher Dionysus, and I would prefer to be even a satyr than a saint.
Interesting. Oh, because I do have a satyr in the book.
You do?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know any of that about Nietzsche.
You channeled him.
Yeah.
No, I mean not really, but
maybe I am Nietzsche. Maybe
right.
I've been reincarnated.
The Antichrist.
Nice,
right there.
No, I'm a Christian, so I'm not Nietzsche. But I do know that what I like about Nietzsche. I think aren't they coming out with a movie about him?
Oh no!
Oh God, are they?
I thought so. I thought it's like his breakdown because he had a breakdown when he watched a horse get beat. And he like ran up to it and said like, I understand you. And this was like a whole, I'm pretty sure there's a movie coming out about
I mean,
him.
people say that.
Are they going to make him like black and gay and
I hope
female?
Yes, of course, obviously.
But, I mean,
of course.
His insanity is...
Only if Netflix or Disney's doing it, then yeah.
Dude, by the way, speaking of the have you seen the memes that have like the screaming liberal after the 2016 election, and that's like the 2024. It's like a black girl screaming. It's like the original and the Netflix remake. Like
no, I mean, okay, that makes sense though.
No, I did not know that about Nietzsche at all.
It's you channeled him well.
Getting back to this topic of like art that is requires some effort to understand, and also tying this back into dialogue. One of my biggest pet peeves is the sort of like the current generation of writers, of millennial writers who grew up on Joss Whedon, on the sort of snappy, self-aware. And I think, I don't love or hate Joss Whedon. I think sometimes his dialogue is very good. Sometimes it's a little too like, hey, I'm being very clever. Watch me be clever, sort of thing. But there's like this sort of watered down millennial version, like where it's and you see it all the fucking time in so many sitcoms and shows from like the late 2000s to just like the 2010s, where it's like the joke is okay, so that happened, that literally happened, it's okay, we're doing it right now, it's a thing, it's literally a thing now, where it's like instead of there being like a punchline, like a setup and a punchline, it's like you just have characters commenting on the thing that just happened. And I fucking hate that so much. And so this is actually, and you saw it leaking into the new Star Wars trilogy. So I was watching a clip from some like nerdy like movie podcast. I don't remember which one, but these two guys they were like, okay, so I know that George Lucas gets a lot of shit for his dialogue in the prequel trilogy, like like I hate sand and it's coarse and it gets everywhere. That dialogue's bad. I get it, but I prefer that over stormtroopers fly now. They fly now. It's like that really obnoxious, like millennial. Like I'm just going to comment on the thing. It's a thing now. Stormtroopers fly now. I'm just that's literally a thing now. I'm like, yeah. As bad as George Lucas's dialogue was, like this sort of millennial, self-aware. Let's comment on the thing because it's literally a thing type of dialogue is really fucking. And I feel like there's I think some value in dialogue from previous generations where you go, okay, that's how people talked back then. But there's like this really lazy obsession with let's just like go on TikTok and get all my cues from dialogue, get all my cues of dialogue from whatever the young kids are saying these days, and that's just like a very superficial, lame, way to write dialogue.
I think and maybe this is me being a crusty old man, but I think it's.
I'm with you, dude.
I think it's kind of a symptom of the way that people engage in talking to each other now, because there's so much weird like there's too much irony or something. It's like people are afraid of being sincere, and it's little things like when you get the time wrong and when you're meeting, you go, "Oh, I lied. We're meeting at 8:00," and just something as simple as saying "I lied" to me is such a crazy thing to say. Rather than saying, "Oh, I got the time wrong," you're saying, "No, I like intentionally misled you." It's just such a strange construction, and I think there's so much irony in the way we speak to each other now, and like really lacking in sincerity of like sort of just owning up to what you mean by things.
That's a very good point, and I've also watched some video essays on that on the line. You see it all the time in Marvel movies, and I'm not saying that like when Marvel does drama it's good, but at least it's like, okay, like there's a character moment happening here. There's some characters where it's like, okay, this is meant to be a sad scene or meant to be kind of a touching scene, but then like there'll be like a pause with beautiful music, and then the character says something like, "Hey, but do I still have to do that thing?" It's like, come on, you couldn't just let this be like a nice moment between two characters. You had to have like the character do the millennial thing.
You know what, Joe? I'm glad you brought, because the example I thought about that I fucking hated, that was also in Star Wars, did that exact thing when it's at the end of, is it episode 7 or 8, when she finds Luke and gives him the lightsaber, and then it's like real dramatic music, and he's like tosses it back. I fucking hated that so much. I think that's that's the exact example, and it's like I'm fine with whatever the term is, like messing with expectations. A lot of comedy is based in that, but also subversion. It's like, subversion, exactly. But like that, I think was done really poorly, and it's a gamble, fine. But I think that's a perfect example of like, oh, dude, you couldn't just have the moment where like she finds Luke Skywalker, and maybe it's also because I can't stand Mark Hamill anymore. But I know, that doesn't help. But it's that thing.
No, you're absolutely right, especially at the end of episode the one before that, The Force Awakens, where it ended on a cliffhanger, where it's like she hands him the lightsaber, and then he looks at her, and then it cuts, and like, oh shit, I wonder what's going to happen. So you think it's going to be like a big dramatic thing, and then you piss all over it by just tossing it, because that's literally a thing.
They're not yes-ending themselves. They're denying their own story.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, like you were saying, we're so ironic that everything's been done, and because we've all grew up on the internet now. I mean, basically, we're all so that's what I think. We're all jaded and have seen everything. So it's like everything feels like a caricature. What new can you do other than just acknowledge that this has been done a million times?
I think it sucks. I think we're being a nerd to shit. It's like I can scroll on my phone and watch like a Ukrainian guy's head blown off, and then I'm supposed to like act normal for the rest of the day. Oh, that fucking happened.
Or live leaks back in the day. I mean, it's just like this has been a thing forever.
That though, at least not ever. I don't mean to cut you off, but at least then you kind of just search it out.
Yes,
this is like, true. I didn't sign up for this. Yes, I'm not following this account. This is like, you might want to watch this school shooting. It's like, no, I don't. I don't want to watch this. Here's someone getting hit by a car, and I get really fucking mad. And one of my things that I wrote a whole thing about this. I fucking hate animal cruelty. Like, I don't want to watch animals get hurt. I'm sorry, I don't. It's one of like it's probably one of my most lib-coded things about me. Like, I don't even eat most meat.
Virtue signaling much? No, just kidding.
But I'm serious. Like, I don't eat most meat. I don't want to see animals get hurt, and I hate just having it be like put in my face. Right. Like, oh, here's a dog getting hurt or a cat getting hurt. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And so we're very jaded. But I mean, this is kind of what the next question I was going to get at is, I mean, is that a little disheartening where, I mean, I think about this when I'm writing music. I'm almost like, where do I even go anymore? Because everybody's writing now. And actually we just finished up a book, which I recommend if you're interested in cryptography. Julian Assange wrote a book back in 2012, or it was like I guess it was
it was like a
television show or something. Yeah, it was a dialogue. But they quoted this guy who was saying like the printing press allowed everybody to read, but the internet allowed everybody to write. So like first people learned how to read, and now people are learning how to write. Everybody's writing in some sense, and I think obviously that's great for many reasons, the democratization of all this stuff. But it also can become overwhelming because it's like, okay, so now everybody and their mother has a book. Everybody and their mother has a song. Like everybody's putting music up on Spotify. Like I'm just a random guy. Do you ever feel disheartened about that, or do you not even think about that? I'm asking both of you.
No, I think it's better. Yeah. I do. I think the gatekeepers kept out, and back then it was like, it sucks. A lot of like women couldn't be writers. They just couldn't do it. That's why a lot of early women writers didn't go by their names. They went by initials, or like they had male pen names or whatever. And I think that really sucks. And I'm a believer in the democratization of it. It's like the cream will rise to the top. You can get your work in front of more people. I mean, a lot of great. My books are self-published. Like a lot of books, like The Martian was this huge sci-fi book that was originally self-published, and it got out there because he put it on his blog, and now that became like a huge sci-fi movie. So no, I think there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but that'll be passed over, and I think it actually gives opportunities more to people who like don't have the ends of who aren't the quote unquote like nepo babies, which I actually defend nepo babies, but it's like that point of like the people who have the in, who have the have all the connections. I don't find it disheartening at all. I think it helps more than it hurts.
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ben on this one. I mean, I think there are trade-offs to both sides. But I would rather, because it's funny because it seems like with both sides, like there is an extreme, right? So it's like when before the internet, the extreme was that there were not enough writers out there, but now it's like there are too many writers. But at the same time, I also as a pretty free market dude, I'm also like, but this also incentivizes people to get creative and come up with new ways to cut through the noise. So like for example, Ben and I when we were doing Horror Fest for October. We covered analog horror, and so there was this one series called on YouTube called Backrooms, and the director of that was like a 17-year-old kid, and he just made this all online. It was all just like these these render engines that are either very cheap or free, and he made this really cool like sort of short horror series, and he ended up getting a film deal through this because he was such an imaginative kid for A24. Which is a studio that both Ben and I like a lot. But it's like I love the idea of somebody who is just a total nobody who, because they came up with something original and risky, they managed to cut through the noise. Whereas pre-internet, there are so many people who I think were much more risk averse. So the idea of it's very democratic. It's like it got tons and tons of views. So it was so good that Hollywood could not ignore it. So
I just want to say one more thing, and then I have to go soon. But I think this will because I was thinking about saying this earlier, and now with your point, Eric, there's a lot. As I said before, I watch a lot of movies, and I watch a lot of just like average, fine movies. Like they're good. I watch some really shitty ones, and I watch some amazing ones. And with art, like Joe and I love art. It's a big part of our podcast. I'm going to Italy. I'm going to see lots of art. I'm going to go art, like lots of museums. But what I fear is exactly what you were talking about or people becoming a nerd to things. Are we all just becoming numb? And and that because certain art, whether it's a movie or a song or a painting, whatever it is, if it makes you feel something, I think that's what's important. Does that horror movie, is it cheap scares, like jump scares, or is it like, no, this is like dreadful, or a piece of art? And I've come around to, I guess what you would call like, not modern art, but what, Joe, what am I going for? Abstract art.
Abstract.
I think a lot of it is bad, and that's subjective. But one abstract art that is good, that gets beneath the surface, and the whole point is that it gets you to that feeling, whatever that is, melancholia, excitement, without the typical, human or animal or whatever it is. It gets you to that point without showing you those things is actually more commendable. And I think even cooler. Now, I think a lot of it fails at that.
Yes.
But ones that can do that I give that much more credit. So basically, if art, there are a lot of just like average novels. People will probably find my novel average or bad, but some people will love it. And if I can bring that, if I can like make someone feel something, whether it's they laugh or they're upset or whatever it is, and not in a cheap way. What I always say is, you can always make a movie about a dog, and you grow attached to this dog, and then they kill the dog, and it's going to be sad, because it's sad when a dog dies. That's a cheap way to do it. But if you could do it in a non-cheap way, like a real profound way, like that will last. Some of the best movies, two of my favorite movies, are I guess the one that I think, and I recommend this to anyone, is called The Passion of Saint Joan of Arc. This movie is amazing. It is a silent movie from the 1920s, and what that movie can do with just facial expressions is more than like the vast majority of dramas do over the next 100 years. Really watch this movie. I don't think it's very long, and it's incredible. It has some of the best just like pure acting you'll ever see.
Cool. And then the other one's Pootie Tang, right?
Yes, Pootie Tang's the other.
Oh yes, the subtext of that film. Yes.
And actually, no, I am totally fine with just like pure comedies, just movies that make you laugh. And honestly, we don't have a lot of those anymore. There's very few. In the past 10 years, there have been very few just pure comedy. They always have to have a message. They always have to. No, why can't it just be Step Brothers? Why can't it just be I think Step Brothers was like kind of like Bridesmaids was kind of like the tail end of that. It was just like even that had some messaging to it, fine, but
it's sort of like irreverent.
Yeah, just like pure comedies. That's just like, this movie is there to make people laugh, and that's it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that is a product of, or maybe an unintentional product of what you guys are talking about. Everything's too ironic. Everything's too self-referential or whatever. Yeah, self-aware.
Yeah, the comedy and horror are, I think, that can be, at their best, two of the purest examples of that art exploring real experience. Because the experience of laughter, or the experience of being scared, or terror, or like disgusted, or whatever, that's 100% true. It's all just truth. That's just what you are feeling at the time.
Yeah, it's very human. It's very like humanistic to like feel scared. It's a cool thing.
There are plenty of comedies that I like that I've never laughed at, where it's like, that's funny, but I enjoy it. But like the handful of comedies that actually make me laugh out loud. I mean, it's like somebody tickling me. It's like I can't help myself. I have to laugh at that. Or like a scary movie. Or it's like this is creeping me out. This is going to keep me up.
Even though you know it's going to happen. Even though you know it's going to, it's still scary, dude. Right. Monty Python the Holy Grail,
terrifying.
It holds up. Like every still, like I watched that 100 times as a kid. I watched like 2 years ago again. Every scene is funny. Like every fucking scene is funny. Anyway, guys, any thank you for having me on and for reading the book. I appreciate the support.
Yeah, of course. So does Neon God. Did we say the title? Neon God by Ben DeLisio. There'll be a link. It'll be in there. I'm sure everybody. What?
We don't need to mention the author, though, right? We can.
I do think, and again, I'm not just saying this for you to buy my books. I do think knowing you guys, like Anthony and now Eric, with like what we've talked about, I think the last two, which are like dystopian, political, that sort of thing, I think that was more kind of up your alley than the hardcore gay sex that's in the Neon God.
I liked it though. Still, it was fun.
Which also has hardcore sex in those books. So
thank God,
and more.
Well, on the tone of sarcastic and ironic millennial subtext, I'll just say it's been a real unpleasant experience having you guys here. I hate that you guys came. No, just kidding. No. But
this podcast literally happened. It's literally a thing now. It's a thing. I'm just saying, it's a thing. We're adulting.
But thank you so much, and it really was enjoyable, and everybody should go out and buy it and read the book because it's awesome.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys, for having us on.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Next time.
See ya.